Of course, nobody can deny that Yorubas are more tolerant when it comes to matters of faith than we are now, and we have been polluted. But I want to talk about your submission concerning democracy. It seems you are demonizing democracy. But I've read some historical accounts of atrocities perpetrated by our leaders in the pre-colonial era. Then, should we not be thinking of how we can maintain our own system of government and also borrow something that may be good from democracy? Or should we jettison democracy completely? Because I want to think democracy is good, but it is the loss of the Omoluabi mentality that is making us to practice democracy in the destructive way. Then the second one has to do with the issue of labor or work as a curse. I wouldn't know whether there are other versions of the Bible that portray work as a curse. But the versions I've always read shows that even before the fall, Adam was given the assignment to till the ground. But the fall occasioned a curse, which was to make the ground to begin to yield to lower quality and quantity for Adam and Eve, thus making it more tedious. The same thing has to do with the issue of childbearing. He said, I will multiply your pain, which means even if before the fall, there would have been childbirth pain. Am I in order, Prof? Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. With regard to democracy, some of the historical things that you mentioned are a function of even more contemporary issues in the last 300-400 years. The first white people who visited Yoruba land saw a system of democracy that was by far superior to whatever happened in Europe. And Professor Folarin Shylon, documented this because this was part of his research. He used the case study of Egba, and you know in Egba you have 5 co-equal things, even though now you have the Alake, of Egba land, as they say. But you had a system which was so democratic. And in some parts of Yoruba land, especially in Eastern Yoruba, you had an Oba, a king, and you had a queen, but they are not married. They are not related. So the Oba, who is the king, and the Oba for the women, the one presides over the affairs of women, the other presides over affairs of men. But when there is a community thing, both of them then come together with their councils. Okay, so we had all these developments before the patriarchal system of Christianity and Islam were then superimposed, and that was what Professor Yeronke Oyewumi, was documenting in what people there. Wow, what kind of people are these? You know that in Yoruba land, when you have a baby, nobody asks, is it male or female? You see, the first thing they ask is Asokale Amfani, Obimelayo. Okay, and everybody celebrate with you because a child is a child. People don't make those patriarchal, distinctions or matriarchal distinctions. So with regard to that, my grounds with democracy is that originally, democracy where it came from was never democratic, which is the ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, so-called ancient, you find that in that period, it was a minority, freeborn, propertied group that gathered in the agora, okay? Women were never involved. And Athens was a slave-owning society. Actually, they constituted the minority in their society, which is not anything difficult to understand why the white people, Europeans, were able to convert other people into chattel, okay, in the Americas, because where they borrowed the idea of democracy and their civilization, Athens was a primitive society that needed to have, all of them actually went to Africa to learn anyway. So that's with regard to that. So now the second point that we are making is preserving what is good and what we have. There is no doubt. The whole thing about democracy that we are doing, what it does, the technology that we utilize, the paper and the various other components are imported, which is a way of giving to other people your resources. I don't know if it was Senegal or Sierra Leone that had an election where they used marbles. Okay, they were counting marbles instead of all these big wastes. And the problem of division that happens with democracy is also very mind-boggling. How much people lost their lives during the last elections in Nigeria, how much property were destroyed because it was a winner takes all. If the process of governance is supposed to be for everybody, we need to find a means which helps to cement the fact that the governance is for all and is not for a winner or a loser, because there is no winner or loser in the community. We all belong to the same group. Therefore, probably what, outside of my presentation, which is about religion and spirituality, I think our political scientists and political philosophers should be helping us to look back at our indigenous societies and seeing how we can, use what we had and modernize, if that is the word, to create something better. Thank you so much. Dr. Joy? Josie?
Okay. Good evening, Prof.
Yeah.
Nice having you. Yes, I have, yes, sir. I had a bit of connection with my set. So I wanted you to explain again the section of the manner you raised. I don't understand that section. Then secondly, Prof, I have my very strong reservation when you say in Yoruba culture that a child is a child, with respect to some of the stereotyped proverbs that is associated with women. If a child is a child in Yoruba culture, like you said, sir, why would they say, "Ẹni tó daṣọ bìnrin bóra, yèrèpè ló dá bóra"? If you cover yourself with, let me repeat that proverb in Yoruba language that says, "Ẹni tó dá aṣọ bìnrin bóra, yèrèpè ló dá bóra." If you cover if you rely on a woman, you have used leaf to cover yourself, which means that the woman looks like she's less important. Now, if they say, like you said, a child is a child, when they give birth to a child in Yoruba culture, nobody asks if it's male or female. I feel that the women are stereotyped and they are less important. Why would our culture, Yoruba, say, if a man is not dead, it's because the wife has not killed him. So my point is, some of the stereotype proverbs in Yoruba language connote a female child as less important. I am raising it because you said in the culture, a child is a child. I feel that in our culture, the woman, the girl child, it's considered inferior according to our culture in Yoruba land, based on some of these proverbs that they say. For example, they recall "Kakakiosan lara yaje ofi gbogbo omo bi obìnrin." The woman is a witch. So I feel some of these stereotype proverbs have described women as less important. So I have a challenge when you say in our culture, a child is a child. So that's a bit of clarification that I needed. And then the manner thing you raised, I didn't get it, sir. Thank you very much.
Well,
can you hear me?
No,
Tunde, can you hear me?
Let me respond very briefly to that. I think that is Professor Akareze. Just give me a second. Fortunately, I can see Professor Yerunke Oyewumi in the house. Well, I wasn't trying to valorize Yoruba culture in any way. I'm aware of the ways in which, for everything you say, there is also the possibility of the opposite. Okay? But what we find is that there is always a balance. And consequently, in the Yoruba culture, the absolutes, which is one of the points that I made, the idea of absolutes should not be regarded as something on which the emphasis is placed. So on the issue of manna meant, ready-made, something that just dropped from the skies and which people picked. There are situations where that happened, especially during the Exodus in the Bible and all that. So, what you have raised are big issues which will have to be ventilated, probably another paper or something would have to be done for that. Professor Akareze, there are a number of hands that were up and yours is not there. So you will have to give me a second. Let me recognize the hands that are already up so that we will then be able to get to you. Professor Ayotunde Richard first, then we will have Professor Yerunke, and then Professor Okediji.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I'm very happy to be part of this program this evening. And I want to commend you for this thought-provoking presentation. As one of the teachers of African traditional religion from Adekunle Ajase University, in fact, I'm at home with this presentation. So my question, sir, is that with the influence of foreign religion and Western culture, what will be the fate of indigenous religion among the Yoruba now? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Actually, Yoruba religion is more popular outside of Yoruba land than within the Yoruba society, because the twin religions that came from the Middle East have virtually succeeded in demonizing, indigenous African traditions. But fortunately for us, I think, both, I think it is Lagos and Osun states, they have actually granted Isheshe days, that is as holidays. I do believe that the part that you are playing, and which some of us are also trying to play, by having this academy and various other things we are struggling very hard to do, are the kinds of things that will help us to ensure that we have an intellectual base on which, your suggestion can be anchored so that it doesn't go into oblivion. I once told somebody that a time will come, if we are not careful, when we will have to import professors of Yoruba language to teach in Yoruba land the way we are going, because many of my colleagues will not teach their own children Yoruba language, which they called vernacular when I was in school. And if you were caught speaking vernacular, Lord have mercy, you'll be punished. And all of these are things that we need to work on. Thank you. Professor Oyerunke.
Thank you for having me, sir.
Yes, you're most welcome.
I needed to correct this. I am not Oyerunke Oyewumi.
Oh, sorry.
I am Professor Oyerunke Olademo.
Oh.
University of Ilorin.
Yes, because the last name is not there. I thought.
Yes.
Yes, sorry about that. You are
no problem.
Welcome.
It has been a
highly
very
respected.
good,
yes.
A very good presentation. I want to commend you, Prof. I want to make some observations using the Yoruba as an example. I have a book out there, Gender in Yoruba Oral Tradition. It was published by CBAC, but I'm just trying to, I will try and say something I think can contribute to the discussion. Gender for the Yoruba is a reality. That is a departure from the position of Professor Oyerunke Oyewumi. Her position is that the Yorubas never had gender. My position is that they had gender, but gender was not fixed. It was flexible. For example, some women are husbands to some other women.
Yeah, yes.
A Yoruba person will immediately understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
now,
that didn't mean lesbianism.
No, please. No, please. Now, the comment on negative proverbs for women is another good example of the and non-absolutism of the Yoruba when it comes to the issue of gender. So I really enjoyed your lecture. The bottom line, I think, is that we take what will serve our agenda from modernity. We do the same from our heritage, and innovatively, we synchronize it to serve us. What we are doing right now is to reject totally the heritage and to again embrace totally the strange one. And I'm sure we all see where we are. I want to also end my comments by saying a large chunk of this responsibility rests with academics. By academics, I mean everybody from primary school to tertiary institution and the curriculum. If we can get our focus, our sight on these two structures, then change must definitely come. Thank you so much for the privilege.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for helping me to clarify a lot of these issues. At times, it's very difficult to put all of these things within a presentation medium like this. And, you know, I used to visit University of, Ilorin when, you know, my organ brothers were there. I believe they would have retired now, you know. Professor Okediji, then we will have Professor Akareze.
Thank you very much for your presentation, really powerful presentation. My first observation is that nobody published that presentation out here in the West. The manuscript will be rejected in the process. So it leads me to my second point, that we do not fully understand that the biggest avenue of warfare is actually cultural. It is not the shooting of guns. It is not the bombing of people. You can bomb people much more effectively when you bomb their minds. And that kind of destruction takes generations to heal. And that is what has been happening to us. We have been massively bombarded with these foreign ideas, and it's strategic. We still continue to believe that we can, especially those of us who are academics in foreign universities, including me, the university structure, especially in North America, is that the tenure process is based on publishing in university presses, and university presses mostly located in the West. And this simply means that your mind is totally controlled by, that is the mind of the academics, is totally controlled by the institution that wants to continue to dominate you. But we have new opportunities now, given the technology of global connectivity. And as much as possible, we academics need to rethink this notion that we can rely on foreign presses to really convey our ideas to our people. Because until we can take control of our educational system and the dissemination of information that goes to our young people, we will remain in this situation. I hope not forever. In other words, we at this point need to regenerate our university presses in such a way that they can begin to produce books that are avenues for disseminating ideas like you just presented, because there is no university press in the Western world that would publish what you just gave. Now, that's one observation. Second observation, in terms of gender, it is still part of this confusion. What does gender mean? We just take one word and we impose these words on ourselves. And these things really have no meaning when you translate it into Yoruba. There's nothing like gender in Yoruba. Now, there is, of course, some kind of relationship between men and women. And that relationship, I don't know if gender is the right word for it. We need to be a little more creative in terms of the terms that we use. But a lot of the time, we're not even speaking to ourselves. We're speaking to the Western world. And so we begin to use their terms, and they reward us. The more we use those terms, they call us to conferences, they invite us to on and on like that. So I don't think the relationship between men and women is a static relationship. I think it changes over time. It will keep changing like anything. It will continue to change. So what you see here, what we have now that is termed traditional, isn't necessarily the way things have always been. It is just the way things are now in terms of what we can excavate from the past. So when we have this situation in which men clearly now dominate the culture, it is clear that all interpretations are going to be patriarchal, are going to be male interpretations. But it does not mean that 500 years ago, that was the way it was. So we need to be able to find a way to rethink a lot of these notions, just like you have said. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. That's, thanks for helping to clarify, my thoughts. We are in constant dialogue about the other suggestion that you have made. So, and I'm not going to let you just vamoose. and just disappear and not come back to it. So I will be on your back. All right, Professor Akarweze, Lucky, has he disappeared? Unmute your mic. Professor Akarweze.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, first let me comment this gathering via technology. First, I'm able to see the face of Moyo KDG. We were together at about 1989 at Uyo. So Moyo, greetings here from University of Port Harcourt. Tunde, yes, I've listened to your lecture. You talked of epistemic deficit in some of the literatures, foreign literatures that are bound in our environment. Well, I want to raise 4 issues with you here. For example, when you talk of that in the Yoruba culture, male dominance in terms of sexism is not well entrenched, not well pronounced. The womanhood in Yoruba tradition, the issue of commodification and thingification as manifested in the bride wealth practice. Recall in the early 80s when you married, I was there, somewhere around this area, I was there. Yoruba collect bride wealth or bride price, depending on how you call it. I think these are clear indication of traditional oppression of women. That is patriarchal society, androcentrism, male dominance in our society. Secondly, you elogize the Yoruba traditional religion. Do I say religions? Yoruba traditional religions. Yes, there could be some good virtue about it, about this religion, the traditional religions. Have you forgotten the issue of human sacrifice? As at today, if you read Nigerian news media, in terms of ritual killings, why is it that it is more in the West? The Abeokuta, Lagos axis, organs harvesting, and rest of them. So when you are talking of the egalitarian tendencies of the Yoruba religion, I think, are you not over-amplifying it? There are some negative virtues that still persist till today. When I was growing up in Delta State in those days, we were called Ogbomo. It was the assumption that those who come to kidnap little children for ritual sacrifices, they were always coming from the West. True or false, I cannot say. But Ogbomo in Sheki language means carrying little children, So what I'm trying to say here, that the Yoruba traditional religion, in the manner you have presented it, has some negative tendencies too, in terms of human sacrifice, which is still being manifested today. Then the third one, you talk of the 2 monotheistic religions. And from some of the script I saw, that it is believed that God that can do everything, that has control over everything. Does the Bible actually say so? That is absolutism in terms of the omnipotency of the supreme deity as espoused in the 2 monotheistic religions of Judaism/Christianity and then the Islam. If you look at Genesis 6 there, I think 5 or 6, when man was said to have committed sins, God regretted that he created man. The issue of regret, no matter that it pained God that he created man, shows some limitation that the Bible too acknowledges some level of limitations within the Judaistic tradition. Yeah, the last one I want you to comment on. The recent election in Nigeria here, in many of the churches, especially particularly the presidential election, especially the Pentecostal ones, the sermon was simply that vote for the candidate whose name you can find, whose name is reflected in the Bible. vote for the candidate that you can find his name in the Bible, which was Peter. I want your comment on that, because the issue now, that's the future of this country. How we have actually allowed our religious belief to jaundice our political tendencies and rest of them. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Lucky.
Yeah.
I'll try to be very brief because General Williams raised his hand. Yes, you see, you are very correct about the issues that you have raised. I was not romanticizing African traditions or religions. Indeed, you do have what is known as bride price in many African societies. Among the Setswana of Botswana and other parts of the region, they call it Lobola. In Yoruba, it is called Owano. You know, Owano does not mean commodification of the woman. It's totally different from the kind of thing that you find in Igbo land. Actually, in many parts of Yoruba land, and in my own wedding that you made allusion to, is symbolic. Is symbolic because there is no value. There is no value that you can place on a human being. And therefore, it is just a symbolic relationship between the family of the man and the family of the woman. And in most cases, it is actually something that both families take part in at the end of the day. For example, when you get 25 tubers of yam, 25 heads of kola nut, obiabata, you find palm oil, you find all of those things. It's not like you are paying, you know, it's not like they are selling the woman to you. It's just sealing, it's a way of sealing the becoming one family of the two families. And well, that's part of it. The fact that it is the woman is the man who pays the bride price. I don't know the origin of that in Yoruba culture, but in Yoruba society, actually, the wife's family will feel ashamed for anybody to think that they are selling their daughter. And, you know, they wouldn't be very comfortable. And even if you are ready to pay, you know, the 10 guineas or 21 guineas that you are paying is not, well, that's in those days when it used to be counted that way. Now, you mentioned the case of human sacrifice. There was actually an Oduifa which showed when human sacrifice was banned in Yoruba society because of something that happened. I've forgotten the Sheifa or Oduifa that said that. It used to be part of the rituals up till a certain point in Yoruba history when something then happened and it was cursed. However, you do find human sacrifices taking place now. And there was one particular Babalawo who actually said that most of the people who are doing these sacrifices are not genuine Babalawos. Many of them are mixing Islamic, Arabic, you know, rituals with traditional Yoruba. This is something that needs further research, but I'm just saying that those things are there And then the idea of monotheism and the idea of God repenting and this and that, it just brings me to the question of theology and theodicy and the way in which the religions of the Arabian Peninsula have been philosophized to give the deity, the parochial deity of the Arab desert, the name of all-knowing, benevolent and so on and so forth, as has been philosophized. And that's a subject for another project that I have identified, which is about how Western philosophy of religion has become so sterile and unproductive and in need of assistance from other cultural perspectives. The last one that you mentioned, I don't know if I'm answering your question successfully, the last one about democracy and religious politics. Well, some people have argued that what Peter Obi did in the last presidential election was totally unprecedented. The way he has weaponized religion and tribalism, and many people are actually happy that he lost because, if you look at it very carefully, the consequences of weaponized religion in Nigerian politics, that is making it as divisive as he has done, would not have been very, very savory for Nigeria had he been the elected president. So I think that just as the gentleman before you mentioned, we all need, as intellectuals, as scholars, as students, we all need to go to the drawing board to help our different communities and how to deal with some of these challenges that we face. Thank you very much. General Ishola Williams, over to you, sir. General Williams?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. I am not going to get involved in the intellectual discussions or the academic side because I'm not one. But what I want to say is this, is that, in fact, what I want to focus on really is the question read by Professor Ogunleye about the future of indigenous religion, not only in Nigeria, but also within Africa and in the African diaspora. And interestingly, it's not only the African diaspora that is interested in indigenous religion now, but also the Caucasians too are also interested. And many people who are looking for a way out are not practicing the Asian spirituality, are looking to African spirituality, whether there's a way out from the Western spirituality we're practicing with Christianity and other philosophies, apart from other religion. Therefore, what I want to say this is that indigenous religion, especially the African one, has a future, and it is just growing. And that is because thanks to the Europeans who first started writing about indigenous religions in Africa. And therefore, Africans have taken over, especially Roman Catholic priests in Africa have taken over writing about indigenous religion in Africa also. Having said that, I also was very, very happy about what Professor Oyeronke said. In Zimbabwe, for example, all world religions are taught from primary school level, so that children are exposed to the various religions of the world in terms of tolerance for other religions. That is not happening in most African countries. So Zimbabwe is a model in that particular area. The second point I want to make also is that if people who teach, professors, lecturers, those who are getting graduate degrees in indigenous religion, are very serious about what they are doing, they should be part and parcel of the academy that has been created for indigenous religion. And that is very important and very crucial. And secondly, also, a lab is now created to do research into what we call indigenous religion and the various aspects of the religion, whether it's in customary law, the artistic aspect, and so on and so forth. So a lab has been created in which people can people have a platform now in being able to do whatever they want to do in terms of finding studies, research, and everything into that, which also leads to progress. And most importantly, too, we have started something in which we are looking at what are the indigenous religion or indigenous faith rather than religion, indigenous faiths and spiritualities or the various ethnic groups of Nigeria. That will expose not only other Nigerians, but also other Africans too, that they need to link, they need to look into the various ethnic faiths and spiritualities or the various ethnic groups within their country. And eventually we hope we can do the one for the whole of Africa. Once you have that, then you can start looking at creating a common doctrine. And once you can have a common doctrine for indigenous religion, whether at national level or continental level or at any other level, you cannot theologize indigenous religion and develop a curriculum for undergraduate studies. And start getting, people get bachelor's degree in Islamic studies. They get bachelor's degree in Christian theology. Why not in indigenous religious theology? Once you can create a doctrine along that line. And these are the responsibilities of the various professors and intellectuals who are involved in that area. But what is also important is that you have various religious groups who are involved in various areas from politics to humanitarian areas. You can find indigenous religious groups along that line, okay? The second thing is that there's a world parliament of religion. You can find indigenous religious representation at that level, okay? So I'd want to create a space for people to really understand what your own faith is all about. And if faith is the foundation of a culture, foundation of the artistic inspiration of the people, foundation of their customary laws and so on, it means that you need to pay some attention. And there's no way decolonization can happen if we don't have that foundation of our own indigenous religion. And last point I want to make also this is that thanks to people like Professor Yediji, who is building a whole university dedicated to African culture and art in Ife, which he has locked up from now. I don't know whether it has opened now. I hope he can open it and let it focus on African culture, indigenous religion, and so on. And that will be the first of its kind in Africa. And that's what we need in bringing people back to their basic roots. And that will create a foundation for the African diaspora.
Thank you.
And once you can have that foundation, then you can now have the modernization that we are talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General Williams. You see, I looked in the attendance and I see persons who are here, you know, and Professor Masoha is in the house listening very attentively to what we are saying. We also have Professor Seepe here with us, as well as other senior colleagues. Things are beginning to take some shape. It's just that it is best not to say much. You know, General Williams, thank you very much for the work you have done with Cameroon. You know, and the various efforts that you are making, helping us to champion these things. Those of us who are persuaded that the future is rich, we will not give up. Professor Okediji, I do hope one way or the other you will be able to transmigrate yourself during summer to Ife. I would like to visit Akodi Orisha, which General Williams has just mentioned. A lot of things are happening that just needs to coalesce. And the coalescing is not going to happen if people don't make sacrifices to ensure that it does happen. So thank you very much, General Williams. At one point, we had over 35 in attendance. And even after almost 2 hours, we still have over 22 here. So thank you very much. We'll continue to follow up on the various things that you have mentioned. Ulrich Kleinhempel, I see your hand. Can we make it?
Yes, please. I may comment on the
and then
courage.
We'll have
Yes.
Professor Nicodemus.
Okay. Mhm.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you. I may congratulate on the courage to address the shadier sides of traditional religions too, as of human sacrifice. This issue has often been used to belittle African traditional religion, to say, oh, was just hell and darkness and savagery, and it's time to get away from it. Speaking as a Christian theologian, I have to say, and many of you will know it, that human sacrifices were still common in the Old Testament times, at the time of the prophet Jeremiah, and even later into the Babylonian times. This was a common practice, and in St. Paul's interpretation of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, one can interpret it as self-sacrifice, like a martyr, as he did himself. But in the interpretation that this was a sacrifice by God the Father to himself, the theme of human sacrifice recurs. And of course, in the story of Abraham, God demands of Abraham the sacrifice of his son. And this has been transmitted all through the Old Testament times for centuries. So this issue and the concept of human sacrifice is well present there. Among my Germanic ancestors, human sacrifice was practiced. The Babylonians practiced it. The Phoenicians practiced it. In Rome and even in Greek myth, it is literature, it is mentioned. This is a common inheritance, and only gradually has been absorbed by animal sacrifice or by forms of symbolic sacrifice. So the essence was to be able to give everything to the divine powers, to really make the supreme sacrifice, and in return for favors. So there is no reason to look down on African religion. And from that point, one can then critically see where are the abuses in human sacrifice for magic purposes and other evils that have crept up even in this our contemporary society. These things happen, unfortunately. The other point that was raised, and very important, is how do African traditional religions continue to be active fields and to influence other religions? On Sunday evening, I participated in a ritual of Mbanda, and I could quite clearly see what were the Amerindian elements there, what were Christian elements there, and what were Bantu and Yoruba elements. The Bantu element, of course, of invoking the spirits to do certain work. There was quite a bit of work done for me, and I was very grateful and needed it in this situation. But at the critical point, and you may know, like in Kandomble, when the Orishas are incorporated and the mediums who are characterized by their beads, they are connected to this or that spiritual entity, they begin to work with the powers of these entities. But then there came a point where the medium
Yes, please go ahead. Please be brief so that we can accommodate others. I think you have muted your mic. You are mute. We can't hear you.
Yes, okay.
Be very brief so that we can take, I still see.
Yes, okay. There was one point where the medium took off her beads and changed direction to invoke the Ishu to do this work. And this was a most powerful experience. And there I could see how this Afro-Brazilian religion integrated many other elements, but continued to preserve the essence and to re-establish itself in the context of a secular society in Berlin. This is impressive, and it testifies in a small personal experience to the power of African tradition to form Christianity, to form probably Islam, esotericism, what is going on. It's a change of perspective that I would suggest.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much. And, you know, the perspectives that you have given, they are very, very useful. And there is no doubt that no religion, no spirituality, no value system or belief system remains static. And that is what helps civilizations to grow. People say that the reason why Latin died was because it was not capable of, you know, the kinds of evolution that was necessary for self-perpetuation. But the value of African ideas is that it has always been very adaptable. Thank you very much. You know, when you spoke about sacrifice, I find it a little bit gruesome for anybody to be drinking the blood of anybody, whether symbolically or otherwise, you know, and for that reason, I've not eaten anybody's flesh, you know, and I find it hard to imagine drinking blood, you know, for whatever reason. Professor Awasong, in the house, we do have Dr. Ipadiola here. Thank you very much. We have Ms. Antoinette here with us. We have so many, you know, distinguished individuals. You know, thank you all for joining us. Professor Awasong.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Prof.
Thank you, Prof.
I always enjoy listening to you, and I learned a lot. I will start with the point you made on bride price or bride wealth, and I wish to congratulate you on that. We have bride wealth. It's very, very symbolic. It doesn't represent how much we invested in our children. You know, so it's a language, it's a symbolism, and I think we have to appreciate it instead of translating it in terms of domination, denigration, or something of that nature. Prof, I have a question concerning Yoruba identity. My question is, who are the Yorubas you are referring to? Are we talking about the Yorubas in Nigeria, which is an offshoot of colonialism? Are we talking about the other Yorubas who have left out? I ask this question because the Yorubas of Benin Republic appear to be the most Yorubas of the Yorubas. We have been discussing here the issue of human sacrifices and so on. And Benin Republic is known as the headquarters of, you know, if you want to become president, you go there and you know how many people you sacrifice, etc. So Benin Republic is the most Yoruba of the Yorubas. So I don't know who are your Yorubas, who to whom are you giving this consideration? So I'm a little bit worried. It would appear the colonial divide seems to be part of the discussion. I might be wrong, but yes. I'm trying to wonder.
Thank you so much.
Yes, my last question, Prof, is something I'm a bit bothered about. In the West, the Westerners take pride in Greek democracy. They appropriate it as theirs. It's that type of civilization which everybody leaks from that same pot. Now, your presentation on Yoruba religion is very, very rich. And when we say that a woman is married or can marry another woman or whatever, you quickly step in and say, but not lesbianism, no problem. Yeah, indeed, that is not what it means for us as Africans. What my worry here is that what you are saying about the Yorubas has a Pan-African flair. And if it is too restrictive, if we restrict it a lot to the Yorubas, we lose out the value of what we are saying. What about giving it a Pan-African flair and even drawing parallels from Botswana? Because I overheard you mentioning other countries in Africa where you know, this and that in terms of religion takes place. In order that there should be religious tolerance, they have to introduce it from schools and so forth. So is it not possible to draw lots of parallels from other countries in Africa, because when your discussion makes me, it mirrors the continent of similar issues happening elsewhere. And the ritualization and implantation and so on in Yoruba land replicates itself beyond what we call the Yorubas. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. First, on the question of Yoruba, who are the Yorubas? It's colonialism that created a lot of the challenges about Yoruba identity, and especially how Nigeria also balkanized, how what was called the North and the South were divided. You know, you do find Yoruba as far away as Cote d'Ivoire, you know, along all those regions. The Benin Republic that you mentioned, you have what you call the Onipopo of Popo, the Onisabe of Sabe, the Alaketu of Ketu. All of these were Yoruba, you know, areas that were divided and, you know, becoming part of French-speaking Benin Republic, Togo, and I mean, in the case of my very good friend, who is from Ghana and Togo, his family property was virtually divided half and half between Togo and Ghana, and he has 2 passports, and he speaks 2 languages apart from his own indigenous language. You know, so I'm just trying to say that the Yorubas are everywhere, not to mention the diaspora. However, some time ago, Professor Okediji will remember that I reached out to him. There was an Ifa verse, Eshe Ifa, which actually helped us to define who the Yorubas are, apart from the historical attributions which tend to say that it was other people who were naming the people called Yoruba. All of these are in need of proper scholarly research. I reached out to him to point out that, you know, what he just gave me solved a puzzle for me, but I have not had the time to go back and look at it very carefully. On the second point that you made, the second point about democracy, I'm aware that in Botswana, for example, you had the Kotla. The Kotla was the meeting point where, you know, people in the society met in the evenings to resolve communal matters, to deliberate. Very different from the demos that took place in the Agora, you know, which was not an inclusive kind of thing. That was the point I was trying to make. So all of these are in need of careful research for the kind of teaching, for the kind of propagation to inform curriculum development. The UNESCO did a history of Africa. You know, they did a series on history of Africa, but we need to go beyond that into the more, because when you have grand histories that are being documented and compiled like that, a lot of the materials that go into it actually don't reflect the minute details of the indigenous cultures and peoples under consideration. And I think that these are things that we need to begin to do going forward. And this is why this particular academy is very, very important for all of us. Many of our colleagues, especially the people you would expect, which is the lamentation which General Williams was indirectly alluding to, is that many of us remain insular. We define our own success to the extent to which, the Western world begin to embrace us and sing our praises, forgetting that our own constituency, which is what Professor Okediji was talking about, is also very dear to all of us. And whether or not we take this challenge very seriously and come together to put our mouth where our issues are, to invest properly in these things, would continue to determine, the success or failure of our humanity. I don't know if that addresses some of the issues that you have raised. Thank you very much. I don't see any other hand up. We have been here now a little, 2 hours. If there are no further questions, may I just thank everyone, Professor Awasom, Ulrich, General Williams, Dr. Epadiola, Ms. Antoinette, Professor Okediji, Professor Latunji, Ms. Gibbs, Professor Murphy, Professor Samuel, Olusegun, Professor Seepe, Ms. Kimara Elliott, Dr. Senso Hule, Professor Adetumbi, our Madam Bello, Ms. Johnson, Professor Sibanda, thank you very much for being here. And Professor Tijani had said it would be a little bit late, and I'm surprised that he finally made it. Thank you very much. We hope that the academy can actually cooperate with the center, the wonderful global center that Professor Tijani heads. Thank you very much. And my lucky boy,
Tunde.
Yes, sir. So
how your body?
I do, body the inside cloth. So I want to thank everyone on behalf of the academy. Would Professor Ibikule Hakim Tijani want to say something? Otherwise, my task is to thank on behalf of the academy and the lab, as well as the journal, which is beginning to take shape, and Pan-Abstract, to thank everyone. We will always continue to reach out to you all, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor. And
Thank
have a
you,
good
sir.
day.
And for
Thanks for your effort.
all those things, Professor Seepe, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your effort.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
See you in Ife in July, I think.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for accepting to be part of that project.
Yeah, I should be there. My alma mater, my great Ife.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
That's the one and only university except University of Ibadan also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Tunde.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
a pleasure. Thank you. I think I can stop recording.